Better me.
Better me.
Better me.
Better me.
It's better me. Hopefully.
There you are. I've been waiting here. I won't say how long I've been waiting though, because it's quite embarrassing, and it takes me back to that time that I waited on the corner for the girls to bike to school for like 30 minutes, and then I realised I'd been ditched from the friend group, and they had left earlier so they didn't have to bike to school with me. Oh my God, childhood trauma to start a podcast. Not a good start to the podcast. Okay, let's turn around. Let's make it positive. Today, we have a wonderful guest. We're going to be joined by the one and only Jazz Thornton. We're going to chat about the decision to go on mental health medication.
And it's the same thing of like going to the doctor and needing meds for your physical health. Like, you're not just going to walk around on a broken leg. That's so dumb.
And of course, we're going to find out what's real and what is absolute BS when it comes to mental health support.
Because there's so many companies, I think, that realise that mental health is now being talked about. So it's a trend. So we need to try cash in on it, which is so frustrating. I do think I had the unfortunate discovery that exercise is actually good for your mental health.
Oh, yeah.
Better me. Hopefully with Sharyn Casey.
When it came to talking about medication and taking steps, there was somebody that I've talked to quite a lot about this, and she's also somebody that has helped so many people on this journey. She's saved lives. She's got lived experience, and I always just find that she has the most beautiful way of talking about things. So please welcome to Better Me, Jazz Thornton.
Hi.
Jazz, thank you so much for doing this. Like, I know that I'm always like, Jazz, can you come and do this thing? Jazz, can you come and do this thing? But I just thought of you the other day, and I wanted to get you on because, like, we've talked about it many times where I was taking medication for the first time when you last year decided that you needed to start taking medication again, and you and I had like a conversation about that because you really didn't want to. And I think that's really cool that you're open about that, because you're very much like pro, like take the medication, take to this and do that. And so am I. But when it came to my actual self, I was so hard on myself about it. So could you give us like a rundown for people that might not know your journey, about your journey and the decision that you made to take medication?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having me. It's
oh my God,
an absolute honour always to sit down and chat with you. Is one of my favourite things. But yeah, I grew up in the same town as you, down in Timaru with Copeland's Bakery.
Oh my God, the best bakery.
Literally the best one. And had a pretty kind of rough, turbulent childhood. There was a lot of stuff going on with abuse and all of that kind of thing, which led to just a whole lot of mental health issues and many years of that as well. And when I moved up to Auckland, I was kind of in and out of psych wards, in and out of hospitals, and constantly trying different medications. But for me at that point, because it was very crisis-driven, a lot of my experiences, I would be in the psych wards while they were changing medications and all of that kind of thing. And so I think my brain kind of associated medication with this crisis. And as I eventually kind of fought through all of that and I guess got to the position where I am today and get to do these cool things, the idea of needing to go back on medication was scary. And that was because for me, I was like, this means I'm the same person I was when I was a teenager.
I look back at that kid and that journey that you went on, and we did almost lose you, and to now where you are is so incredible. So like, I know that you feel like going on medication means you go back to that thing, but it's really like you're not. You're just maintaining something that keeps you from going to that.
I actually just recorded an episode that's launching my next season of the podcast that kind of is speaking a little bit about this, but I was talking to Jen in it, and she was saying that was the first time since she's known me that she was so concerned, and so was my doctor and kind of everyone else around me. I started isolating again and doing things that I hadn't done in years, and I just didn't know how to get out of it. And I was like, I hate myself as much as everyone else hates me at the moment, and yeah, it was scary. It was so scary, and it was just being in that again was something that I haven't been in so long, which I think is why when the idea of medication came up, which was my doctor, she was like, Jazz, like, we have to keep you alive. Like, this is not good. That I was like, I have to try everything I can because I can't let this be my reality. But it was so hard to get back out of that, and it took a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind saying, how did the conversation with your doctor go, and how did you decide within your own brain that, okay, I'm going to take the medication? Can I also ask, do you, like, for medication, do you see a GP or do you see a psychiatrist?
It depends on the kind of medication. So for this incident, it was a GP because it was antidepressants. For my ADHD medication, that's a psychiatrist. So it's dependent, I think, on what it is that you need.
Yeah, because I didn't know until I had to take medication that a psychiatrist is basically an expert on mental health medication.
Yeah.
So if you need, if you've got something going on, they're a great person to talk to. So how did the conversation go with your GP for you to decide, and like, what was the thought process for you to start taking your medication again?
There was a lot of people in my life at the time that were saying, like, Jazz, you need help, like, you need to see your doctor. And I think people were just kind of at a loss of what to do. And that's probably because in those times, I'm usually the one that is giving the advice and kind of helping navigate that.
I think I said that to you. I need to look back on my text, but I feel like I said to you, what would you tell someone you were helping to do right now? You would tell them to take the medication. Because I was like, in my brain, I'm like, Jazz, take the fucking medication, otherwise you're going to end up not undoing all your good work because you've done incredible work, but you're going to end up not here. So just take the fucking medication. And it was, but you can't tell someone to do it. Yeah. So how did you get there?
That actually made me quite emotional. No, just in the way of, like, that was how I. But that was the reality. Like that, just hearing it out loud.
I didn't make you feel attacked or anything like that.
No, it wasn't attacked.
It was more just like, please do this, like, because I can. It felt like we were going to lose you, so it was like, please do this.
Well, I think the reason that I get emotional is I think that response from the people in my life, from you and the people that were around me that knew this, was the reason that I was like, I need to do this, because it was an urgency from people being like, this is you just have to, and I just remember I had no ability to, like, I just had no emotions. Everything was just flat. Everything was down. I couldn't even hide it, which was a big thing for me because I feel like I've kind of mastered that, of being able to have stuff going on but show up, which you would understand when you're in the public eye. Like, you know how to turn it on, you know how to show up when you have to.
You got no choice, yeah.
So I feel like I became really good at that, and I got to the point I just couldn't. Like, I couldn't turn it on anymore. It's so rare for me to not be able to do that. Yeah. And I couldn't do that in this appointment, which I actually think is the best thing that could have happened, because I could have easily masked that if I wasn't in the space that I was in, and I just couldn't do it. And so my doctor was like, Jazz, I really think that you need to be looking at medication. And I remember my immediate reaction, like, everything inside of me just went like, and
what does this mean?
Well, I was just transported back to the girl in the psych ward. That's when I was talking to you, I was talking to my friend Jane and just a couple of people, and everyone was just like, Jazz,
take the medication.
Like, do exactly what you would tell other people to do. Yeah. And it was the same thing of, like, going to the doctor and needing meds for your physical health. Like, you're not just going to walk around on a broken leg. That's so dumb. I think just being able to have that kind of destigmatized within the people around me, even though that's literally my life's work, which I also think just shows, like, recovery is a freaking journey. Like, it's not linear.
While we're talking medication, we always get an expert on to give us the facts about these things, because opinion is fantastic, but to actually have somebody that knows this through and through and has studied it is so important. So I really want to welcome to the show right now a psychiatrist by the name of Robert Marchl. Hi, Robert.
Hi, how are you doing, Sharyn?
Oh, we are fabulous. Well, the questions we wanted to talk to you around today, because there's a lot of stigma still remaining around people taking medication for their mental health.
I mean, the whole stigma conversation is actually a really good one. As a psychiatrist, I don't have any stigma around prescribing psychiatric medication. For me, it's as normal as like a GP prescribing antibiotics for your chesty cold. So it's sort of anything that can reduce stigma and sort of reduce the fear of people actually taking medication that will be useful and will help treat a proper illness is good.
What exactly do these medications do for our brain, and how do they work?
Okay, so maybe it's worthwhile taking a quick look at sort of how information is actually processed in the brain. So within the sort of 170 billion cells that we've got in our brain, within the cells, information is passed on electronically, but they're all individual cells. So eventually that information has to jump to the next cell. And it does that with what we call neurotransmitters. So they're those little chemicals that sort of bridge the gap, and serotonin or noradrenaline is just examples of these neurotransmitters. And what all antidepressants essentially aim to do is increase the availability of, say, serotonin or noradrenaline in that sort of intersynaptic gap, so between the two cells. So, and if you look at the name SSRIs, so that's selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, so it stops the cell from sort of reabsorbing serotonin, so it can just stay in the synaptic gap longer and have a longer period of effect.
It's so interesting to find out how they actually work. I take them every day. I don't even know how they work. I just know that they work. But back to Jazz, because now that she's taken the meds, I was really keen to find out how she's feeling now.
I feel so much better.
Yeah.
Like, literally, I think obviously it takes a couple of weeks for it to kick in, and I now am like, oh my gosh, it just enabled me to be stable enough to work on these things, to not end up in a grave. And it was for me at that point life-changing. I'm still on it now, and it's been so good. And also just the amount of conversations of people being like in that same boat of feeling like you've gone so many steps backwards and feeling like you're back in that place. And I remember my therapist saying it to me, picture you're going up a mountain and you're going up like this, and if, say, this is like a crisis point, or this is where you end up needing help, you feel like you're in the same spot, but you're not. You've come up. Like, you've been walking this journey. And
it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, and it's also like, Jazz, you feel the same, but your behaviours and reactions are different. Like, you're asking for help earlier. You're doing the appointment. You're not running off. Like, you actually have improved so much more than you think that you have. It's just that these feelings are similar. And because I grew up, every time I felt that level of sadness, which I remember my therapist telling me that I have the tendency to block sadness, because if I feel it in my brain, it means I'm going to end up in crisis and I'm going to end up going and doing something. That this was kind of the first time that I had really felt that level and not done that and been like, what do I do now? What do I do? If you're not going to run and go do something, how do I? And then being able to take the meds, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is Jazz. Like, the fact I was even deliberating this for so long and so scared, like, why? So that I could just keep spiraling?
Yeah.
Like, there was no point in doing that. That was just going to be more self-destructive than being able to level myself out and kind of bring myself back up. Just even to a moderate level was better than what I was in.
And I think that's an interesting point now to check in with some other people as well that I know that take medication, because the spectrum of needing to take medication is so different. Like, you've obviously quite an extreme version of needing to take medication. I was almost in a respite. But then there's people who it's not quite as bad, but they still need help from the medication. It's such a spectrum of dosages and things like that. So I wanted to ask some people why they needed to take medication and how they made that decision.
Two things have stuck with me as the push to get over the line to take meds, and it was a real eye-opener the day that these two things were said to me. The first was that anxiety and depression is a chemical imbalance. It's not a personality trait. It's not something I've done wrong. It is a literal chemical imbalance in my brain. The second thing was someone had said to me, if you had diabetes, you wouldn't hesitate to take meds to save your life. So why is this any different?
So I started taking medication because I couldn't get myself out of a really dark hole. I had tried going to therapy and everything like that, but nothing seemed to work. And then I got to the point where I couldn't even drag myself out of bed. And I thought, this has got to end and I need some more help.
Going on meds for depression was the last hurdle I had to jump in the clusterfuck of my mental health. I had a fantastic counsellor and a supportive GP who both helped me see that my body wasn't producing the serotonin I needed. I definitely grabbed onto it because, quite frankly, I was exhausted. As my GP said, if I was a diabetic who couldn't produce enough insulin, I wouldn't deny myself a medication that fixed that.
One of the main things that we like to do on the podcast, Jazz, is figure out what's real and what's BS. Because I do believe that the wellness industry is trying to cash in on people's anxiety, on people's mental health, trying to basically spend money, delay the inevitable, and you've just needed to take your medication in the first place. But because people don't want to do that yet, there's a lot of concoctions out there that are apparently going to save your brain. People tell you to meditate. My brain's too busy. I cannot meditate.
Neither.
I can't do it. I would feel much more relaxed organising my linen cupboard. But what do you think when you look at the wellness industry, the things that people tell you to do for your mental health? What do you think is absolute bullshit and what do you think is actually good?
Oh man, I feel like there's so much
stuff.
Because there's so many companies, I think, that realise that mental health is now being talked about. So it's a trend, so we need to try cash in on it, which is so frustrating. I do think I had the unfortunate discovery that exercise is actually good for your mental health.
Oh, yeah.
Which is so annoying.
I can't exercise at the moment, and it's like...
Yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah.
People are always like, we'll go for a walk. And I'm like, I don't want to go for it, but sometimes it's, actually. But when you're in a full crisis mode and people are like, just have a cup of tea. No, that's not going to do anything. That's not going to do anything. One of the other things that I think is really good that is not bullshit is the temperature control thing. I don't know if you've ever done this before. It's something I've only started doing in the last couple of years, which is like a bowl full of freaking ice water that if you're in a panic or if you're like really kind of heightened emotions, you shove your face in it, and it does it like resets your nervous system because it shocks you, and you kind of are forced to. I guess it's the same thing as like the freezing cold showers of like, which that's been really good. All the like supplement things. I think people are just trying to make money.
Yeah.
The stuff that's like a lot of stuff will brand it as like this helps with anxious feelings because they know that they can't say anxiety, but they're trying to catch people with anxiety.
Can I say one product though that I don't think is bullshit is I was in the Mount and I forgot my lorazepam and I was getting really bad anxiety, and so I went to a health shop and the lady in the health shop recommended Eve Wellness chill pills. And so you take 1 if it's just like a situational thing and 3 if it's like at nighttime because it helps you sleep. And I have since then, like, they worked so well for me that if I can, they're my first step before going to lorazepam now. And I've tried a lot of herbal anti-anxiety supplements, and I would say that one definitely works. And that's not sponsored or anything. I purchased that, and I would say that's one product that's not bullshit.
Yeah. I definitely think there will be some 100% that are not.
Yeah.
I think that there's just such an oversaturation at the moment now where so many companies have just tried to cash in on it.
Oh, yeah.
But
I also purchased a very, very expensive, well-known brand one, and it didn't do shit.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I think we've taken the same one.
Probably.
I'm scared of defamation.
Yes, can't do that. But yeah, I think obviously just doing the research behind the things, but some stuff that works for me isn't going to work for others, things that work for you, and it is kind of a case-by-case thing.
Better Me, hopefully, sponsored by Specsavers. Our friend Ryan O'Connor from Specsavers is back and we're getting some goss on a bit of eye health and things like that. But can you tell me, Ryan, how can we avoid digital eye strain? Because more and more people are needing glasses to look at screens, like myself. Thankfully, I got some pretty cool ones from Specsavers. But how can we avoid this strain?
Most people know about 20/20 vision. Well, there's the 20/20/20 rule, and that's every 20 minutes, try look 20 feet. No, we have to be American for that. That's 6 meters away. So as far away as you can, every 20 minutes, and blink 20 times, because when we're on the computer screen, we're only blinking about 40 times. That's why the eyes start to get a bit uncomfortable.
Wow.
So try to remember to blink, have lots of breaks, and quite handy to have some fluid there. Stay hydrated. That'll help with digital eye strain.
Wow. Okay, everybody, incorporate that into your life and you'll definitely be feeling like a better me. Not just hopefully. Thank you so much, Ryan.
Back to Jazz. I have a question for you. One of the most common thing that when I am helping friends, when they're first, going through starting to take medication and they're having the side effects and things like that, and telling them like your body's been in fight mode for so long, you're feeling so tired because your body is finally being able to relax. And it's just a period, but in 2-3 months' time, you're going to be like, holy crap, that was worth going up the mountain, like you were talking about earlier. But one of their biggest concerns is that they're going to be on the medication forever. I could happily take sertraline for the rest of my life. Like, I just see it as a multivitamin.
Sertraline gang.
Sertraline sisters! Like, I could happily take it the rest of my life because I don't see it as a burden. I see it as a utility and my superpower. Like, I need that. It makes me a better person. And if it makes me a better person, then I don't care if I have to take it. But obviously, as I was speaking about earlier, it was a journey to get that bravery to do it. But for the people that think they are going to be stuck on it forever, you've come off it, you've gone back on it and things like that. Is it forever if someone starts taking medication?
No, absolutely not. No, it's literally, I guess it depends on the situation. It depends on the chemical imbalance and that kind of thing. Obviously, you've got conditions like bipolar, schizophrenia that will require long-term medication to be able to be at a baseline and live a healthy life. But that's not the case for everyone. And I think that I often see it, especially when you're talking about anxiety and depression, that medication is more of something that enables your brain to just kind of come back to baseline and do the practical things to fight to then be able to eventually come off. And I've got lots of friends who recently actually have just come off it. They're feeling a lot better. And it's still like, you know, coming off it for the first couple of weeks is probably as hard as going on it for the first couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But it's just something for sometimes it's just momentary. You just need the extra help because if your brain is not at the capability to be able to fight through this, you're just going to make it so much harder on yourself and the process so much longer. One
of the biggest elephants in the room for our country is the fact that male suicide rates are the biggest in the world. Like it's so scary how many people, especially my husband knows, that have committed suicide that are male. It's not exclusive to males, obviously. No gender is safe. There's the rainbow community's got high suicide rates as well. But for people that have got partners that they can see are needing help, what's the best way to help?
I think that there are so many different resources available now, specifically in regards to telling stories of other people that have been through this. And I think there's especially a lot of men who are speaking out. You look at JK, you look at, we did a whole sports campaign with Voices of Hope called Behind the Jersey, which had like Izzy Dag and people that had struggled with it. And I think that we can never underestimate the power of those kind of lived experience, being able to point them to be like, dude, you're not the only one. And I think that New Zealand specifically, we have that like she'll be right attitude, and men have to be perfect and fix everything and be this idea of what masculinity is, which we tell teenagers all the time that the strongest thing you could ever possibly do is ask for help. But for some reason that never translated into the older generation of men that are significantly struggling. And I remember speaking at a finance event about 4 years ago, and I had all of the CEOs and CFOs of big banks and stuff around New Zealand and Australia. And at the end of it, there was this man who came up to me. He was very high up in one of the biggest banks in Australia, and I just remember him crying. And I've been talking about my story and a bunch of kind of other stuff that I usually do at corporate events. And he said, I didn't know what to do because on paper, my life is perfect. On paper, I've got the wife, I've got the kids, I've got the job, I've got everything. But I've been feeling this heaviness for so long, and I didn't know what it was, but I got to the point that I believed my wife and my kids would be better without me here. And he's standing in front of me, and I'm like, have you told anyone this? And he's like, no, like I don't know how to. He went outside, called his wife for the first time, told her everything, and he ended up in counselling. And he emailed me like, I think it would have been 7 or 8 months later, just to say thank you for having the conversations and that he was doing a lot better now. And I think the reason that I tell that story is that it's for men to be able to have the conversations, to have the space, to know that they're not the only ones, that it doesn't make them weak. I think is so important. And I think that sometimes it is really hard to know what to do when it is someone that you love that is struggling. And so being able to point them to things and all of the resources and stories online that we see, I think is just helps them feel a little bit less alone, to know that it's not week for them to ask for help. And, you know, being able to ask them, how are you really? In New Zealand, we frickin' scripted it.
Yep.
Like the script, how are you? Yeah, good, thanks. How are you? Move on with your day.
Yep.
We don't know what to do when someone breaks the script.
Yeah.
And like literally officers all the time. That's what happens.
How are you? Good. How's your weekend? Good.
Yeah.
Okay, I can't be bothered talking to you about it.
No, but if someone says not good, you're like, what do I do? Like someone broke the script. Like, what do you do? But being able to have those conversations of like, no, like, how are you really? Like, how are you actually doing? And I know it sounds so cliche and it seems so easy, but creating space for men to have these conversations is so important because otherwise, if we're not creating the space, they're not just going to come up and be like, hey, it's just not what they do.
I actually spoke to a bunch of people that live with mental illness like we do, and I asked them what helps them when they're going through a bad time. What is the most helpful thing that people can do to help you get back to where you could be?
For the love of Beyonce, do not offer advice unless it is asked for. It's like when someone's having a baby and they get all this unsolicited advice on how you should deal with it. It's the same for people experiencing mental health problems. I don't want to hear you tell me I need to just go for a run. I don't want to hear you tell me I just need to get more sleep. I get it. I know it. Please just hold space for me for whatever I do to figure it out. Even if it's wrong and you know it's wrong, just hold space for me and let me just figure it out on my own. And if I come to you for help, then 100% toe talk all that. But just give me space to be.
Checking in for real, like not just asking if they're okay, taking them out and talking to them, being there, supporting them. If they don't want to talk, don't talk, just sit there, have a coffee or whatever. Having a regular exercise program, for me personally, has helped.
My husband and my teenage daughter by default know my signs when depression is nipping at my heels. Things like insomnia, being overworked and getting easily overwhelmed, or being down and sad and tearful for no reason. They know that social events that I'm feeling anxious about can be a trigger, so they make me stay home and they never make me feel guilty about it. I've bailed on so many things over the years. Sometimes just getting into comfy clothes, staying home and not feeling bad about it can really help, knowing that I'm not letting them down.
I just quickly want to check back in with psychiatrist Robert Marchl because I was really curious to know whether there's anything to suggest that we're being overprescribed with medication or if we're coming too reliant on it.
For adults, I don't actually think so. So, I mean, in part of my role, I see pretty much all referrals coming in from GPs into mental health services. And I see a lot of patients who are already on an SSRI. And, I mean, GPs are actually pretty good nowadays at sort of identifying depressive episodes and then starting treatment. And I've not come across a number of sort of patients who have thought, oh, why are they giving an SSRI for this? Where there was queries, I think, was prescribing of SSRIs in adolescents. So under 18s. But again, with more visibility, more knowledge around mental health illnesses and less stigma, that might also mean that sort of parts of the population are actually coming to see their GP earlier and disclosing mental health symptoms earlier, so that they then do get treated more. One potential area of, I wouldn't say overprescribing, but people who sort of suffer anxiety disorder, panic attacks, very often they hope for a medication fix.
Yes.
And then obviously, I mean, SSRIs are indicated for that. But in anxiety, I mean, the gold standard treatment is actually cognitive behavioral therapy. But not everybody wants to do that, but that is actually the one thing that will help. And in severe anxiety, SSRIs can have a sort of supportive role. They can sort of reduce the intensity and the frequency of panic attacks, but it's never going to be a light switch. So they can be used in severe cases, but then a lot of patients go to their GP and say, I've got anxiety, get rid of it, and give me some medication.
I think they're a really good way to round out this episode, Jazz, and I have to say a huge thank you because you give so much vulnerability to this world. Like, there's not much that you haven't shared, and for a lot of people, that's scary. Like, I definitely have things I feel like I have shared every inch of my life, but I definitely have parts of my life that I am way too scared to ever talk about. Things that have contributed to like my mental health and things like that. But the fact that you get out there and you do this and you help so many people, and the fact that you're honest about how you had a bad time too. You're not just out there being like, I'm a survivor and I'm perfect. You're like, I'm a survivor, but I'm still flawed and I'm still working at it. Is such a true example to show people. So I want to give you the last words before I tell everyone what's coming up next week on what is your number one advice for somebody listening right now that this podcast may have spoken directly to them, that has made the decision that they need to take medication and they're still beating themselves up about it and they're scared. What would you say?
I would ask you if you would be beating yourself up if you needed to take meds for a kidney disease or for something like that. I think that it's just the stigma attached to it is so ridiculous. But like, if your friends needed to take meds, you would be so supportive of that. And I think that it's one of the bravest things that you can do. And it also is the best thing to do for yourself, to be able to get yourself back to the place of being able to kind of rediscover who you really are without the stuff that is so hard to live with and to deal with, and you know, the kind of things that mental illness can bring. It doesn't make you weak. It makes you incredibly strong. And sometimes we just need a little bit of extra help. And that's okay. You got two people here that just need a little bit of extra help.
Hell yeah, we do.
And it doesn't mean that we can't live our best lives. It doesn't mean that we can't live our best careers and do those kinds of things. It just means that we need a little bit of extra help, and that's fine.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Jazz Thornton, thank you so much for joining us. We really, really appreciate you. And we really appreciate you for listening to the podcast. Do you want to know what's coming up next week? Good, because I'm about to tell you.
I'm going to be talking to 3 incredible wahine toa who have pivoted in their work. It can be super, super scary to do something like that, especially if you're an absolute star in your work life. It can be terrifying, but it can also be awesome.
So brave leaving your job, of 6 years, and I loved Red Bull. I learnt so much, and it really was my identity as well, mirroring what you guys have said. And as soon as you realise that actually no one gives a shit, no one gives a shit about what you're doing, really.
Thanks so much for listening. I'll catch you next week. I very much appreciate you. Don't forget to follow it, like, subscribe, star, review, all of the things, and anything that we've talked about is in the show notes below. Unless my boss Willie forgot to put it in, and in that case, I have something on him. Yay!